What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from X-Growth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shahin with X-Growth, and today I'm talking to Phil Lakin, VP of Revenue Operations at Aprimo, and we're going to be talking about ABM tech stack. We're going to be talking about how to build an ABM tech stack. There are a lot of technologies when it comes to ABM out there. There are a lot of variety, and usually that comes with a lot of confusion. So what we're hoping to accomplish on this episode is to demystify that a little bit and unpack it a bit for anyone who's kind of looking to build that stack up. So, Phil, thanks a lot for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm very excited to be here.
No, great to have you on the podcast, and I've been looking forward to this chat for a while. Let's dive in, and I want to get your opinion on what are some of the main pieces of an ABM tech or tech stack organizations should look into. Like, what are the bits and pieces that kind of come together to make that cohesive tech stack?
Absolutely. So you've got to build it around your CRM to start with, right? So you got to start with your main source of truth for everything that you know about each account, be it a customer or be it you targeting new names. And your CRM has to have all of the information and is your central point of connectivity, right? Rather than trying to chain systems together, try and connect everything into the CRM as best you can. You need a good intent platform, be that, information about your existing customers or prospects, giving you information about what they're searching for and what they're engaging with. And there are intent aggregators, but also individual places like G2 and Trust Radius, or you could be using Demand Base and 6 Sense kind of tools to aggregate that data together. You need a platform for your automation. So marketing automation, HubSpot or Pardot, whatever floats your boat. You need a tool for outbounding, which is how are you going to reach out to these folks in an individualistic sense rather than the mass mailing from an automation system. You can do that with some of the automated marketing automation tools, or you can have separate tools like Outbound or SalesLoft to empower your BDRs or sales folks. You need a good metrics management platform. We use Snowflake and Power BI, but you need something to be able to pull the data together from all of the systems. As much as I love Salesforce and CRM and HubSpot and all of the other tools, you've got to really understand what's happening. You've got to pull all that data together and do more advanced reporting to see where the trends are, to see where the problem areas are. And the final thing, I think, is you need good messaging. And you've got to have a good process inside your business to get that messaging into the heads of people. And those are the things the key areas that I see.
Interesting. Got it. Okay. So you've talked about intent platform, automation, outbounding, metrics management, and then obviously on top of all these, the messaging piece is very critical. You haven't mentioned, so intent, obviously G2, Trust Radius, Bombora, and then 6 Sense and Demand Base also offer that. You haven't talked about kind of like the advertising piece, the IP targeted ads, or kind of like the account reporting that some of these tools kind of offer. What are your thoughts on that front?
So advertising, I think, is very business specific, and it depends on the kind of advertising campaign that you're focused on. And the type of customers that you're focused on. I think in our kind of new privacy conscious world, advertising is becoming increasingly difficult to target effectively. And it can still be very effective, but I wouldn't consider it a core component of a good ABM strategy. I think your ABM strategy should exist without technology and without advertising. And advertising is a boost to it rather than the core of it.
Yeah. I love it. I love it because there's some people that come and say, "Yeah, we do ABM and we do these targeted ads," and boom, there you go.
Yeah.
That's our ABM. So that's it's I think it's a very interesting perspective that kind of you bring to the table that you're talking about. Hey, advertising is really like that third, fourth layer that one must think about. Okay. Let's talk about how these work together because there's obviously, we talked about outbounding, we talked about kind of intent, there's sales, there's marketing. How does all this kind of come together or you've kind of put them together?
So my approach is technology kind of comes second. What comes first is a good process. So you start by designing your ABM process without technology. It's about really understanding your target accounts and making sure that you've got the processes. So the processes for marketing, for sales, for product management, for messaging, that everything kind of fits together. And then the technology layers into the process. And again, I try and go with a hub and spoke style configuration. So everything connects into one system. When you start chaining systems together, you're going to have more and more problems keeping your data organized and being able to generate any kind of reporting to tell you what's working. Those are the kind of two key things. You've got to think about your relationship with sales to make sure that the accounts that you're bringing in are the ones that they want, that they're in what I call the Goldilocks zone. They're not too early, they're not too late, they're just right at that buying point to keep your program credible.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So totally understand that and I really like your perspective that hey, don't think about even though we're talking about tech here, you
Mhm.
really have to think about that process and systems for your ABM to be in place and then tech to come on top of that. Does that also mean from, you talked about kind of metrics management, you use Snowflakes and Power BI. Does that mean that even from Snowflake is also going to the source of truth and Power BI and pulling that information from Salesforce, or they pull it from different source points?
Yeah, so Salesforce tends to be the central location for what I call the core data. Which are the accounts, who are the contacts, and broadly what's happening inside the account. But you get a wealth of additional information from HubSpot or from your advertising platform. And all of that extra data is too much and it would be too expensive to try and keep it all in Salesforce. So we pull all of that together and put that in Snowflake. So Snowflake contains all of the source systems as well as the aggregated, kind of distilled, summarized data that Salesforce has. So Salesforce is still your source of truth for understanding where something is right now. But if you want to know what it was happening in the past or get into the detail below the kind of summarized level that lives in Salesforce, you can go either to the source system or you can go to the Power BI reports, which are just aggregating all the data and pulling it together from the different sources. You can really get
Right.
into the weeds of what was happening in that particular campaign.
Interesting. Interesting. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Let's talk about this in specifically source of truth. So you talked about Salesforce being the source of truth, but it also sounds like there are information that sits outside of Salesforce, at least the configuration that you've put in place at the Primo. Um, how do you make sure that the source of truth still remains a source of truth, but you also don't end up with data silos, even though there's some of the stuff that is not, for example, in Salesforce.
It's probably one of the biggest challenges. To be fair, there's a set of kind of guidelines, I guess, that I try and keep, which is what information do you need at your fingertips to make a decision, and there's a certain level of data quality that is useful for an immediate decision, and then if you need more quality, you can end up in a kind of I'm sure you've heard analysis paralysis, right? You spend too long trying to get the perfect data.
Mm,
And actually, the data that you've got at your hands is good enough to make a decision today. And a mediocre decision today is better than a perfect decision made in 2 weeks' time. So, understanding what is good enough for now, and that is true, that is the truth. But if you want to spend more time and really get into the weeds because something doesn't make sense, then we'll pull that together and do a kind of one-time analysis. Or if it's something that is more apparent as a problem and maybe we need to change a process or get additional data, additional detail of data into Salesforce, then we'll build that out and integrate that. But it really is just making sure that you've got enough of the right data to make the decisions that you need to be able to make operationally on a daily basis is in the right place. Because you can spend your entire life trying to synchronize everything, and you don't need it all the time.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. One of the Snowflake Power BI component is very interesting for me because one of the things that ABM platforms kind of promote is that they're going to provide you with that, one view of the account in terms of what's happening. We're going to give you the intent data, what are they engaging with, yada yada yada. We're going to give all that to you, but it doesn't sound like that is as applicable for what you're doing or your area of focus. What are your thoughts on some of those capabilities of ABM platforms when they say, hey, we're going to give you one view of the account and you kind of get to see everything from that angle?
Yeah, so I think this is where I'm kind of a bit of a bitter, jaded old man when it comes to technology. Even though I spent my entire career in technology, it never lives up to the promise. And I prefer to be able to have the flexibility of customizing something when I need to. Because there's always something new coming out. There's always something different and a quirk of the data that you're not expecting. And while some of the platforms have a lot of flexibility in reporting and integrations, they don't always give you the exact thing that you're looking for. And having the flexibility of a framework of tools rather than a kind of pre-baked walled garden that you're playing in gives you that flexibility to customize your reporting and analysis for your business and the challenges that you're facing right now. And I know that might not be for everybody, but it's the way that I've always built the tools because it gives you that flexibility to understand where your business needs are today, where your challenges are today, and the specific kind of intricacies of the way that your business is operating or your tools are working or the way that you do advertising is not the way that the ABM technology expected you to do it. And being kind of inside that walled garden prevents you from getting to the bottom of the metrics or the fundamental data challenges that you might be experiencing.
So I guess, Phil, one of the questions that I have is considering a lot of the data sits in Salesforce, but not all the data. It sounds like from at least the setup that you have at Aprimo, some of the main stuff sits in Salesforce, but some of the data points don't. How do you make sure that the CRM, Salesforce in this case, stays the source of truth and you don't create these data silos that draw people away from the source of truth?
Yeah, it's a challenging environment and probably one of the most difficult ones that we face on a daily basis. The real solution to it is about making sure that you've got the right information that's in the right place at the right time to make the right decision. And there's always an abundance of data in all of these different tools. And it's about having and collecting and summarizing the right level of information to be able to make the decision. Because you can always make a decision on the data that you have. And it's about making sure that you've got enough of the right data to make that decision. Because you can end up in a analysis paralysis and spend too long investigating and understanding the data to make the right decision. Whereas if you've got enough to make a decision today, that's going to be a lot more effective than making a decision in 2 weeks' time, because you're 2 weeks ahead of your competitor in that scenario. And sometimes the data that you make isn't perfect. The decision you make on the data isn't perfect, and there is actually more detail behind it that you need to go and analyze. So go back and analyze that, and then either enrich the data in your primary source of truth, or update the processes to make sure that that's maintained if you get an exception. But generally, it's about making sure that you've got enough information to be able to make the decision. It might not be perfect, but it's enough to make the right decision.
Got it. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is, we kind of like talked about the tools that you use, and you talked about how Snowflake and Power BI really are used for visualization. One of the things that if somebody starts to research ABM tech, one of the things that you see as the at the very beginning is the ABM platforms making the promise of giving you a full view of what is the account, what is the experience of the account, what is happening with the account. Hey, here's information about the intent data for the account. Here's the information in terms of what they're doing with the ads. Here's the information, right? So there is that promise of we're going to give you the full view of the account. I guess my question is, what happened that you decided to go down building that Snowflake Power BI dashboard versus kind of relying on some of the ABM platforms? What are your thoughts on some of that account view that ABM platforms offer?
I think for the most part, the promise of technology doesn't always meet the expectations. And I can say that from being in the industry for 20 plus years. And while the delivery has definitely got better, technology is far superior to what I ever thought it would be 20 years ago, it still never meets the kind of intricacies and the level of customization that you need for your business. Every business that I've worked in has been totally different and operated in very, very different markets and very different processes. But the one thing that remains the same is that you have your process before your technology, and the technology is going to change. The pace of that technology change is also increasing. So I don't like being hamstrung by a particular vendor to get everything done. I like having the flexibility of a toolkit to get me the things that I need rather than relying on a single vendor to solve all of my needs. And having the toolkit of Snowflake and Power BI, I can build pretty much any kind of reporting. So if for example, our marketing team identifies a new advertising source that isn't integrated into our ABM stack, we can start using it straight away. I don't have to wait to get that integration. I can just plug it into Snowflake, and if I have to build my own connector, we can do that. But it lets me get up and running much quicker and be a lot more flexible with the platforms that we choose. We don't have to have integrations. Now, the platforms do integrate broadly with a lot of different technologies, but there's always a scenario that comes out where there's this weird thing, we want to be able to do it. Okay, how are we going to get the data out? Oh, there's an API, or they can send us an export. All right, cool, let's get it in. Let's start working with it. Let's experiment. Let's see what happens. And just remaining flexible, having loosely coupled systems helps you be a lot more flexible in that environment.
Interesting. Very interesting point of view. Love that. I guess my next question is, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make when they're trying to build their tech stack? Now, usually, ABM is a pretty big piece in B2B space when one is building tech stack. But overall, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make when attempting this?
I think the one that I've seen most often is being too reliant on the technology, which is kind of bizarre. Being a technology guy is picking a technology and only doing what that technology lets you do. You've got to be innovative. You've got to go out there and try new things and see what else is on the market and find what works for you. Best practices are vastly different from industry to industry, from business to business. Every business is different. The way your business operates, the way your customers buy is different than the way their customers buy at a different organization. You've got to be willing to go and try new things and not be stuck in the way that the technology that you're using makes you do it. So again, comes back to my point earlier. What really matters is the process. What is your program? The technology layers on it. Mold the technology to fit your program. Don't make your program fit the technology.
Being restricted by the technology. That's so good.
Yeah. Or not even so much restricted, but just kind of it controls what you can do. And because they don't integrate with this, or they don't support this kind of technology, or it just makes you do things that might not be right for you. And it might be good enough to get you started, But once you get to a certain level of maturity, you're going to want to do things that the technology doesn't let you.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Is there, I have some rapid fire questions I want to ask you, but before we kind of get to those, is there anything else with regards to building ABM tech stack that you think maybe I didn't touch on or it's important for us to talk about?
I think you've been very comprehensive. I think from the couple of companies that I've worked at with ABM stacks, the biggest difference, more so than the technology, is the targeting. Understanding what your target market is. Are you going for new name? Are you going for customer expansion? Are you primarily B2B, B2C? Like understanding where your people live and what they do is the most important step. Like how they buy and where do they hang out. If you can get those two things right, then your ABM program will form around that.
Got it. Okay. No, I really appreciate that. All right, let's do some rapid fire questions, sir. So, first question I have is what is one resource? It could be a book, a blog, a podcast, talk, whatever it is, that has fundamentally had a fundamental impact on the way you work or live.
Wow. There was a book I picked up a good number of years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, called The Naked Leader, written by an author called David Taylor, I think. It's the best management book that I've ever read. Just getting back to basics, learning how to work with people and just be your honest self.
Love that. Love that. If people are interested to know more about RevOps, building tech stacks, I understand revenue operations is more than just building the tech stack. But if somebody wants to kind of get more information about that and really elevate their understanding, are there resources that you kind of refer to regularly? Are there books? Are there kind of websites? Are there newsletters? Does anything come to mind?
There's a few things. I would say the one that has been most comprehensive is the winning by design methodology. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or heard about it.
Yep.
It's a very interesting methodology that really tackles the customer journey as a whole in modern SaaS environments, more so than anything else that I've tinkered with. Go check that out.
That's awesome. All right, fantastic. Next question is, if you could give one advice to B2B marketers or operations team in revenue operations teams, what would that advice be?
Build better relationships with your teams, with the people that you're going to be working with, because everything comes down to that. The technology and the tooling, it doesn't really matter. If you've got good, sound relationships and you understand how your organization works and where the levers are in your organization, that's going to make you successful.
Love it. Okay. Who are some of the influencers that you follow in the RevOps space?
I actually don't have a great answer for that one. I don't really follow many influencers in the RevOps space. There was a guy that I met, and I went to a conference. I think he organized a conference a few years back. A guy by the name of Phil Lakin. He runs an organization called Conversion XL, highly focused on conversion rate optimization. He's an amazing guy, super smart. He's one guy that I continually follow and stay on his heels.
Yeah, Pip is great. Pip's been on the podcast and he's awesome.
Oh, I had no idea. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a while back. It was a while. We probably have to bring him back, but no, he's definitely a gold mine of insights. No, great. Last question is, what's something that excites you about B2B today?
The speed of change. When I started in this industry, you could do the same thing time and time again, year on year, and have great results. That's no longer the case. Your competitors are on your heels. The technology is changing on a weekly basis, and I love the pace of change, and the pace of change is increasing, and that just keeps it interesting. It's never a dull day.
Love it. Phil, this was an awesome conversation. Just want to say thank you very much for coming on the podcast and for sharing all the insights. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
Fantastic.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make the show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shahin, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just keen for a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week, right here on Growth Colony.